Hey folks, in this interview, it's all about implied nude photography. This is Twitter. Hey, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today on the show, I have the distinct pleasure of having a good friend of mine, Mr. Matt Granger. You've seen him on the show before. This time, he's joined by somebody that's more cool than he is. Her name is Stephanie Pham.
Oh.
And she happens to be a model and several other things that we're going to learn about during this interview. She and Matt collaborated on a project, a tutorial, a training course on implied nude photography. So they're kind of the 1-2 punch in that industry right now. We're gonna talk about some of the secrets that photographers need to know about in order to be successful in that genre of photography and sort of avoid some of the pitfalls that a lot of people fall into. So Matt and Stephanie, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thanks for having us, Frederick.
Yeah, welcome. Okay, so first of all, before we kick this off, Stephanie, can you tell us who you are? We all know who Matt is, so whatever. But we don't. we want to know about you, and then Matt, we'll get to you, and then we'll dive into the interview. Stephanie Pham, Pham, pronounced
Yes.
Pham, like family. Tell us about you. What's your involvement in this project?
Hi. Okay, so I'm Stephanie Pham, obviously. So I model, and I've been modeling for about 10 years now, and I have experience in implied nude portraitures for about 5 years. And in the course specifically, I actually give my 2 cents in terms of the model's perspective, because I feel like there's a lot of things that the photographer could learn more about the model side that could actually help improve their photos and also communication with the models. So that's pretty much my involvement in terms of how the course goes. And I guess myself personally, besides modeling, I'm also acting. I also have my own YouTube channel.
Cool.
And just, yeah, I'm always busy. I'm
That's
a workaholic.
awesome. You're a content creator. That's what you are. You're a content creator. Matt Granger, just give us the elevator pitch for you. You and I met a long time ago. You were doing... You've since rebranded, but back then you were doing stuff very specific to Nikon, and now you've shifted. Mm-hmm. You've seen the. No, I'm not going to say you've seen the light, but you have rebranded away from being brand specific. Tell us about that journey a little bit.
So, well, to be honest, I had the name That Nikon Guy, which I chose the day that I started the channel, which actually we just had, I think it was the 8th anniversary, 8-year anniversary. I forget the year, but it was definitely the end of January when I started the channel. And it was just because I had a bag full of Nikon equipment, so I thought, let's reach out and get the Nikon users at least. But I never only looked at Nikon gear and only used Nikon gear. And it got to the point basically where I was with one of my business advisors. He kind of was brainstorming with me saying, so what's the best case scenario would be what? You become a Nikon ambassador, but then you wouldn't be able to talk about other brands and you wouldn't be able to give your honest opinion if it was negative about Nikon gear, which I didn't want that. And on the other hand, think of it outside of photography, GM isn't going to work with that Ford guy.
No, that's right.
And if you're a Ford lover, you may not want to view a channel called That GM Guy. So seeing I'm not only doing Nikon gear, how about just make it my name? And because, half of what I'm doing is actually about travel or technique or eating seafood or playing with my cats. Well, that's not half my content, but it's a lot of
it's a lot of it, though. Come on, it's a lot of it.
It's not just Nikon camera. My cats are right here. I'm so tempted to bring them.
Don't say anything bad because they're looking at you.
But I think with Steph's intro, she was a little bit too modest there. We've been working together for close to 3 years now. She was I think the first model definitely the first model in the States that I really connected with and kept working with on an ongoing basis. And she still comes all the way up from Philly to New York to work whenever we're filming together. And she brings a lot more to the table than just standing in a beautiful outfit in front of a camera. So I've learned a lot from her about posing and, to be honest, about scheduling and a lot of things about getting the most out of my time. And any good model, I don't need to soften this for Steph. She knows where I'm going with this, but being a great model isn't about being exceptionally good looking. A great model is someone who knows their poses, knows their angles, is professional, is reliable, who's good to work with, who takes direction, who understands the goal of the shoot and helps you get there. And often the most amazing models I've worked with, Steph is an exception because she is very beautiful as well, you wouldn't even notice them on the street. It's once they hit their pose that everything lights up for the camera. It's not about looking like you just walked off a magazine cover shoot all the time. Yeah. So it's all of that experience that I really wanted to bring to this series, because in any shoot that I have with Steph, at least half of the pose inspiration comes from her and from her experience and having worked with so many different photographers. So she has a lot to bring to the table in the series, rather than just dropping in a little 2 cents here and there. It was really about trying to show both sides of the process, because you can't get, I think, anyway, you can't get consistent good results if you're not both comfortable in a shoot. And that goes twofold if it's a nude or revealing shoot. And I think maybe even more so when it's implied, because if it's nude, it's nude. So nothing can accidentally slip into the shot. If it's implied, but someone's, if you don't have an established relationship of trust, there may be that element of, is more going to be shown than I was intending. So,
well, let's put a fine point on that. The whole part, the discussion around nude versus implied versus, what here in the United States, the United States is well known for its hypocrisy and puritanical type behavior, right? We can show nuclear bombs taking on entire cities, but if you show a nipple, that's the end of the world, right? So let's put a fine point on that from the experts, both of you guys. So what is what? How do you, in your minds, as professional, content creators that play in this genre, how do you define nude versus implied versus porn versus whatever, right? Because people lump all that stuff together. How do you split it out?
I'll jump in, and then if you want to take over as well. But it's I think it's a really good question, and I hate to not give a precise answer, but I think the fact that is so imperfectly defined is where a lot of the issues come from. And that's something, again, that we were trying to do in this course, is to be clear that what I consider to be implied or boudoir or too much and not tasteful anymore will be different to Steph, will be different to you, and will be different in every viewer. So you actually need to have that conversation really explicitly and clearly each time with the model, because if I've shot with Steph 100 times now, more than that, I know this is what she's cool with, this is what she's not cool with, this stuff we haven't shot, so I'd better check that with her. But a lot of it we can actually take for granted now. That doesn't mean that if I go and shoot with another model, they're going to be cool and uncool with the same stuff. So you need to have those conversations again. So if you're showing that shot there of her sitting on her back, if you were saying, okay, so it's going to be a nude back, but it won't show any private parts. So for some people, that may mean a little bit of bum crease is fine. For some, it will mean not at all. It needs to be side on. Be really, really specific about it. So if we're not showing nipples, does that mean showing the entire breast other than nipple is okay? Mm-hmm. Or we're intending not to show breast at all? It may seem pedantic, but you really want to be totally clear on that, so that takes out a lot of the guesswork. If before you get to the shoot, we've both said, okay, these long laundry list of things are not going to be shot, that's clear. Yeah. And these specific things are what we're shooting for. That takes a lot of the guesswork out of there. And something that we talk about in this series is, and I think this is where, and it's justified, I think, there is a bad reputation in this part of the kind of I don't know, there's mud in the water. I don't know how to explain it exactly, because there are, dodgy photographers out there who are saying we're going to shoot this, but are actually maybe shooting more, or end up sharing things they said they weren't going to. So I think a key concept is, if we've agreed that X, Y, and Z aren't going to be shown in the final image, then why the hell do they need to be shown at the photo shoot?
Right.
And
Yeah.
If my camera can't see it, why do I need to see it?
And Stephanie, how do you chime in on that? Like from your perspective, it's setting expectations and knowing what you're getting yourself into before you hop in the car to drive to the location. Like looking at it through the quote lens of how people perceive these different genres of photography, pornography, implied nude, and nude. Like, how do you come in on that?
Well, I agree with everything that Matt said. He like pretty much covered everything. Communication is super important. It may be a little bit uncomfortable for a lot of like models or even photographers to even have that conversation, but I think it's really important to just you have to do it. If this is something that you really want to produce and you really want to learn, then having that conversation with each other and actually getting the finer details and understanding what the goal of the shoot is, it makes things so much easier when it comes to the shoot day. Because like if a model is uncomfortable, it's very obvious to see that in any image. Yeah. Even if they're trying really hard to kind of just like, okay, I'm fine, but this is still a little weird. You can see it in their eyes. And you don't want that because it'll mess up the image. But I think with this course in particular, I know we get a lot of questions in terms of like, or even comments like, oh, that image, it's nude. And how I would define nude is like full nipples, breasts, general, like completely nude, naked, like just fully exposed.
Yeah.
But if it's implied that the person is naked. So they may not necessarily be naked. They may actually have covers, or they're wearing lingerie or underwear, or that's how I think we define implied for the series. So it's very tasteful. And when Matt asked me about it, I was perfectly down with it because one, I've already created, like, we already have that trust between each other.
Yeah.
And there was clear communication of like what was going on, like what shots were going to be produced. And the fact that I actually could put in my 2 cents of like, oh, I think adding these poses would be very beneficial on the model side. And like, I think a photographer directing a model in a certain way would also help too. So I think it's a very, I guess, full course of information that I think is really beneficial for anybody who's interested in even giving it a try.
Yeah.
The definition point though, I want to make it clear I'm not, so I'm speaking for the we, sorry. We're not trying to say that is the textbook definition that should be what implied nude portraiture is. That's what we're teaching in this course. That's how we're defining it, because we had that conversation and came to an understanding that if you show female nipples, anyone's full backside, or anyone's genitals, you'll get kicked off social media, then that's explicit. The flip side of explicit is implied. So through the series, there's some shots where it's not practical to remain fully covered because, if it was, make it as simple as a chest. If you're covered like this, then yes, wearing a little strapless bra, you could be completely hiding that, or just wearing small covers. But if you're going to show the side or the back or the shoulders, then straps aren't going to work. So whether the model was wearing a full one-piece swimsuit, but then it's posed and hidden out, and we do that in one of the shots where it ends up looking completely nude, but she was actually wearing a full bodysuit, through to if they are actually completely nude, but then you're using posing, light and shadow, camera angles to conceal any of those offensive pink parts of the body that set off the internet censors. That's what we consider.
Or brown or beige parts, depending on who you're looking at. So Matt, like on that vein, so what drives you as a photographer to want to participate and play in this genre, knowing all the overhead that you get into when you're shooting it and sharing it and all that? What's the motivating factor?
So I guess stepping back, probably to when we first met, I have shot 2 books of art nude photography. I've done a couple of exhibitions. I teach on it around the world. But to be perfectly honest, once I moved to America, it is a lot more sensitive here.
Yeah.
And I kind of put that to the side. So then just keep at least some clothing on so that when we're teaching, there's no issue with that. There's a whole can of worms here. I don't know if we want to open that up in this, but
yeah, open it. Come on, it's the podcasting
I'll
world.
circle back to that one. But I did a series where my second book actually was about why is it, and you touched on it, why is it okay for a 15-year-old to see someone get shot in the head, but not to see a fully exposed woman's breast?
Right.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And going a step beyond that, a man's penis, the website gets shut down. That's the worst thing in the world that half of the population has. Why is that an offensive thing? I can understand if it's, outside a school, or if it's clearly meant to be erotic, why some people find that offensive. Mm-hmm. And there is a time and a place for it. I get it that if you're scrolling through Instagram with your grandkids sitting next to you, don't want to have that conversation every 30 seconds when something pops up that you weren't intending to see. Yeah. I get that, but I also don't think it's offensive. So we did this whole book exploring that theme. And then, it is a sensitive topic. And especially last year, I feel like there was a lot of atmosphere in the photography community about this. So Steph and I really took our time and planned it out and thought about what are the lessons that will, for both parties, to be PC, I would say to protect both parties, but in reality, to make it's for the model's safety. When you're talking about a male photographer and a female model, I think there's obviously an imbalance there of who has what risk on the line, right?
Yeah.
But of course, there is a reputational risk of a photographer inadvertently doing the wrong thing, but I think it's more so for the model.
And I want to dive into that part of it. That's a whole section that I want to chat about with you guys. But the other side of that coin, I think, is, motivations notwithstanding, the human form in general, male or female, is art in and of itself. So, applying light and shadow and your superpowers of being a photographer, and the Stephanie skills of knowing how to model and knowing what looks good and how to pose and how not to pose. That's the artistic piece of it. But then the monetary piece of it, sex sells, obviously, right? And controversy, especially here in the US, I would imagine wherever humans are, sells. So, and to put a fine point on it, this podcast itself, I would imagine, is probably going to be listened to and viewed more than many others, right? Because of the title and because of the subject, matter.
It does and it doesn't. So yes, sex sells. Sex is the oldest profession. There's, books written on it ad nauseum.
Yeah.
But there will be sponsors out there who won't sponsor this podcast for you.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's true. Yep.
So we just put a video live 2 hours ago where it was a live photo shoot, and I was showing how, not nude, Steph was wearing a swimsuit, a one-piece swimsuit, how to refine a shot. And we did it live. So over 20 minutes, we showed, so here's a shot that kind of works. And then we stepped through all the different techniques, posing, lighting, adjustments to get to the final shot. The YouTube algorithm decided that, I guess, the swimsuit, they saw too much of her skin and decided it's adult content and that it's not suitable for monetization, and they're probably limiting who's allowed to watch it.
Yeah.
It is again a fine line, because if you make a clear black and white of what we said, know this body part, know that body part, well, just take a look on Instagram and find the 5 million photos uploaded today that follow that, but that are hugely eroticized.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm wearing a thong, but I'm bent over the hood of a car. I mean, come on. It's nothing to do with that. It's just an algorithm picking up skin. So yes, sex sells, but the reason I stopped doing that, and to be fully honest, of course, that was part of the reason why, as I was growing my channel, having a beautiful model on, that does help the view count, as you said.
Absolutely.
But coming to the States and wanting to work with different brands, the risk reward wasn't there. So even though I agree the body is art and you don't need to be a slim, attractive female for that to be the case. My book is men, women, 18 to 60 plus people. It's all mostly non-models, actually. The reward isn't there when you are potentially offending so many people that other brands don't want to work with you.
Yeah.
But circling back, if we're going to do this series, then let's do it right and do it in a way where we can make sure that the shoots go smooth, help people get beautiful images, but also minimize the risk to the people involved. So communication and being clear that implied nude doesn't mean the same thing to everyone is an important step. So we show shots where you can remain fully in a one-piece swimsuit and still get beautiful shots that imply nudity, through to other ones that are going to need someone basically who knows how to do yoga to be able to get into the poses. and it is a 90% trust thing where a wrong camera angle and it would be too revealing.
Isn't that interesting? That is so interesting, because it's that layer on top of just, otherwise fashion photography or portraiture or whatever you want to call it, having that layer of, okay, it really matters. This quarter of an inch could mean that this shot can be shown on Facebook or not, because it shows this extra fold of skin right there, which is going to make people upset. Like, that's got to be challenging from both the model standpoint and the photographer standpoint to play, because you're playing in a box within a box, right? And then you still may get it wrong. Like you said, the algorithm may still say, too much skin, you're out of here. Right.
Yeah. So that's actually something we do in a couple of the shoots, is to show, I had mentioned before, if it's not going to be in the final image, then why does it need to be in the shot? Now, there are times, why does it need to be exposed at all? So rather than speaking abstractly, I'm shooting a guy, we've said his penis won't be shown. Okay. So we're all adults about this. That's the understanding, but anything else is okay. So a man could put a sports sock over his privates, and if it's not going to be shown, then the sock shouldn't show up either. And doing things like that means that 5 years down the track, after I had this wonderful shoot with Frederick where I captured him at his peak and he made this beautiful art for his partner, I don't have to worry that I've forgotten what we agreed couldn't be shown, because if there's a sock in any of them, then I clearly know, well, that wasn't meant to be shown.
Right, right, yeah.
So that's a great insurance policy, because the last thing I would want to do as a photographer is to say on the day of a shoot, XYZ won't be shown, and 5 years later have a nipple slipped into some of the shots and forget that we had said that would never be shared and screw up.
Yeah, and have it come back to bite you. Let's switch gears. Let's go down that track, sort of how the course will take me from zero to hero in terms of knowing how to do this kind of photography. And Stephanie, from your standpoint, I want to have you both chime in on this. How does that work? So I know you have a relationship with Matt. You guys have been working together forever. You know each other. You trust each other, etc. But what if you don't have that? What if you don't have that friendship where you trust the other person and you still want to shoot with them because you've seen their work? From your standpoint, what do you do? How do you proceed when a photographer reaches out to you and saying, hey, I want to do some nude or implied nude photography with you. Here's my body of work. What's next? How do you respond?
Well, I mean, every model is going to be different, so I don't want all photographers to kind of base their story off of my, I guess, process of how I go into working with photographers. I know models that are completely comfortable with implied and nude, and that's their whole portfolio. That's what their specialty is, so they'll work with anyone that's willing to hire them. For me personally, I have a rule. I will consider doing implied or nude after I have shot with you a handful of times. Mm-hmm. That's just because I would want to ensure that I'm comfortable working with you. I know what you like to shoot, which angles that you like to shoot me, and I could really do my poses. Every photographer has different shooting styles. Some photographers, they just like to click away. Others, they like to prepare every single shot and adjust lights. So since everybody's different, for me, I always kind of just hey, hire me for a shoot first. We'll just do normal photography, portrait, fashion, whatever it is. And then like after we have built up the rapport, then I will consider if that is something that you would
can work
want,
together.
then
It's like you want to date before you get married, right? So
yeah, exactly. You don't want to jump the gun and just bend down on one knee and say,
hey, we had a coffee at Starbucks. Will you marry me?
For me?
And it's the same in a way to the photographer, again, with a lower risk in the game, but shooting with models who aren't experienced and that isn't their specialty, and I've never shot with them, I'm reluctant to shoot, to be the first time they're shooting with someone, if it's for any kind of an important project. If it's somebody wants to shoot something, I'm thinking specifically of one I did recently for their partner. They'd never done that kind of a shoot. They want to make a beautiful art print to give to their husband or boyfriend, right? Mm-hmm. So in that case, yes, I would do it. I would encourage them to have other people. You're wearing the same outfit.
I know.
Did you guys just shoot this?
No, that was like 6 weeks ago when she still had hair.
Yeah, when I still had my long hair.
Wow.
I would encourage them to then have some friends or family there, whatever it is that's going to make them more comfortable. It could be being alone, but more often it would be having someone there. But shooting with someone when they've never done that kind of thing before, it is difficult if you're not both experienced in it. And if one of the parties at least needs to be, I think, very experienced at it, or the two of them need to know each other. So if a model and photographer have worked together a dozen times and are both really comfortable and they've both never shot this, but they want to get started, then this course will help, and it does start you out with baby steps. But if one of them is an expert and the other is brand new, then you can make that work as well. But if you're both inexperienced and you don't know each other, the chance of it getting just uncomfortable and miscommunication and not yielding great shots, I think, is pretty high.
Yeah, it could definitely go off the rails. I remember I was at what was it? I think it was like a workshop or something where, where there's a group of photographers and you're shooting and you're one of many. And, it wasn't implied nude or nude, but it was a fashion type thing. And for some reason, I've been shooting since 1989, right? So for some reason, I had messed with my camera the night before and I'd forgotten that I'd put it on back focusing, and I couldn't figure out how to trigger my camera. So I'm the guy sitting there like, what the heck is wrong with my camera? And my brain wasn't in that mode to troubleshoot it because I felt like I was under the gun. There's this beautiful woman there that's waiting on me to shoot her, and all these people are behind me waiting their turn. And I was just like, I just walked away, so.
That's actually the situation you're describing is what I had in mind when I started to mention that I look for more experienced models when it's something important. So when I teach, for example, more than a particular look, I need someone who is super experienced and comfortable, because that will happen. Mm-hmm. And if a photographer gets lost in his settings, and it happens to all of us sometimes, the last thing you want is that awkward feeling to creep into the shoot of someone being there semi-clothed or undressed, getting uncomfortable because there's just silence in the room and they don't know what's going on.
And you're the guy. You're supposed to be the CEO of the shoot. You're supposed to be in charge. You know what's going down. You're demanding coffee. You're moving lights, and you're expected to produce some amazing work at the end of it, right? And if you lose confidence in your model or the people that are with you, then what do you have? Now you're just a guy up there with a camera. Yeah.
Well, it comes back to communication. So. I think it's helpful at every level, but especially when you're getting started as a photographer or as a model or as a collaborative partnership, to have reference images that are guiding where you're going, and then to be really clear. So we're going for this kind of a pose, but I want that kind of lighting, and it's going to be this scene or this outfit or this whatever. And as you're working through and refining the shot, actually sharing it with the model. You don't necessarily have to be all professionally set up with tethering and whatnot, but to be able to show and say, so this is what's working and this is what isn't. Keeping the lines of communication open is important. And again, being honest about your level, whether it's a model or a photographer. If you present like you're some super experienced person and never show the shots through the shoot, and then they get them back and they're all garbage, then of course they're going to be upset. If you make it clear, I've only done this twice. I know you're experienced. I'm willing to hire you. This is what I'm trying to create, but I'm not at that level yet. At least there's some kind of expectation. So then having something in writing about how images will or won't be used is also important.
It goes both ways. If a model comes in and they're just like, I'm very experienced, but they can only pull off one pose, then it's that's kind of tough too.
Yeah. See, that's the key, and that's that I'm hearing. There's honesty and communication, right? So between the model and the photographer, and then sort of gauging each other's skill level. Where is it a newbie green photographer? Is it a newbie green model? If so, how do we compensate? And sounds like it goes back to communication. How does that, like the brass tacks and the tactical part of that communication work in the beginning? Do you Matt, do you set up a physical in-person meeting? Do you do a Skype call, or do you just roll the dice and show up at the location at the time?
So it'll be a combination. Normally, so there's a couple of different ways we do it. So for example, I'm looking to book a model in another American city for the end of this month. So I've gone on and looked at different model websites to see who has the right kind of portfolio, who clearly has done this kind of shooting before, and then I'll reach out to them. And I'm a little bit of a stickler if it's a job where I'm hiring someone and it's going to be it needs to be on this day, and we need to be clear on these 5 points, and it needs to start at 1 and wrap at 6, and all of that needs to happen. Then, well, Steph helps me with this when we're running workshops together. It can be difficult, and as many photographers are flakes as are models, so I'm not suggesting this is a model only thing by any means.
Right? This is humans.
Yeah.
But I try to be super specific, and I'll say, to apply, you need to send me these 4 things, dot point 1, 2, 3, 4. And if the application is missing even one, even if they are the most gorgeous model I've ever seen in my life, I don't consider the application, because being attentive to detail and arriving, how often we have a shoot where everything seems totally organized, but half an hour before the shoot, they get in the car and realize it's an hour drive to get there. I mean,
right.
Come on. I can't work like that. So I probably over communicate, especially if it's the first time I'm shooting with someone. I think we're both
sticklers. I'm just like, no,
and maybe
I'm not going to tolerate it.
Well. Good, yeah, because it can only go downhill from there. What about planning for the shoot? We've talked about communication and making sure that you're on the same page, both of you, the model and the photographer. But the goal of the shoot, do you have a shot in mind that, if I come away with this particular shot, then, the shoot was worth it? Or do you just throw yourself in there? I got my lights, I got my location, I got my beautiful person there, and I'm going to see what I can harvest out of this situation. How does your brain work?
Every shoot will be different. I would say in the context of this series, I would strongly suggest going in with a theme and, if possible, some specific shots. Mm-hmm. Steph and I work so much together now that if I have like I do today, 6 lenses to test out, I know I can just look out the window and see, okay, what light do we have to work with? Will it be indoors, outdoors? Steph always brings 20 outfits, and that I can ad-lib it. Again, because we have a shorthand now, I know what is good and what isn't, how much time we can spend outside in a New York winter, in how many layers of clothing, that kind of thing. We're good. But of course, if I'm hired to shoot someone who hasn't shot before, or someone who's less experienced, or whatever the requirements are, then of course sometimes it's going to be a matter of exploration. And in fact, we do that in the shoot as well. There's times where I'll go into a shoot and just start off on some basic poses that build up confidence, that build up trust, that help me gauge the communication and how well they take direction and what angles might look good for them, knowing that the first hour they're all going to be thrown in the trash. Mm-hmm. But from there, then I know what kind of, do I need to mirror the pose for them? Do I need to show them reference shots? What's going to actually work and what kind of poses look good. And in that process, if we're talking implied or nude or anything where it's a portrait, to get to know the model's preferences. Someone might have a preferred side, or it could be something much more specific of they dislike a certain part of their body, or that they
how do you get that data? Is it a conversation, or is it a form, or like how do you capture that info?
If you were doing it day in and day out, then you're probably doing a form is not a bad idea, but I have lost all any sense of being shy about asking those questions, because it's just more important to have the conversation. In not speaking about nude photography, but generally through my portraiture over the years, every time something has ended up blowing up where there was a miscommunication and someone didn't like something, I had an inkling of it at the time, but didn't have the conversation. And I think it's kind of true of when a lot of business deals or this or that go wrong as well, where you can sense there's something in the air that hasn't been specifically addressed. I just address it. So, and I assume everyone involved is going to be adults. So saying, are you comfortable looking at this shot with this much butt on show? Mm-hmm. Yes or no, delete if no. Have the specific conversation. It may feel a little bit uncomfortable the first time, but words like penis and vagina don't make the roof fall down. So saying it specifically, it's the mature way of going about it. So I get really specific about it.
That advice works in much of life, Matt Granger. I'm just saying. Communication. And a boss of mine back in the day used to say, good fences make good neighbors, right? So if you understand where the boundaries are, then there's not a whole lot of confusion when somebody steps over one. What about the team? Like the team that is on site? I know it varies obviously from shoot to shoot depending on what you're trying to get. But do you typically work with makeup artists? Obviously probably not a stylist, but makeup artists and that sort of thing?
It depends on the shoot, but I'm very fortunate. Well, probably it was by design. I started working with Steph because I knew she had a YouTube channel. She acted. She has great complexion. I'm not big on doing lots of retouching. And she's not... I don't want to say this like it's a criticism of people who are, but she's also she's not at all vain. So if she does have a pimple or she's a bit bloated or she's got a little bit of cellulite or something, it's not something that she has an issue with it being in the final image. So she can do her makeup. So generally, unless it's for a specific campaign or something where we need a look, then we might get someone. But for everyday beauty / glam stuff, then Steph is able to do that herself. But I think, and here's one of those, I feel like there's something in the air that should be specifically addressed things. A lot of photographers are uncomfortable with models bringing people to the shoot. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And I think it is really worth addressing. So from both aspects. One, I would say as a blanket rule to photographers, if the model wants to bring someone, let them.
Yeah.
If you have a shoot, and it does sometimes happen where the studio says it's a maximum of 6 people allowed to be on set or whatever, then those kind of issues need to be worked out. Mm-hmm. And from the photographer's point of view, yes, there are times where having that extra person on set can be a pain in the ass just because of the personality of the person. Or you have someone who has no artistic eye, has no real interest in the shoot, but wants to have their 2 cents listened to all the time. That can be difficult and distracting. Mm-hmm. But just having someone in the room for the comfort of the model, especially if they're undressed and, vulnerable, or anyway, having someone come to a place they don't know to meet a photographer they don't know. I mean, when I go and shoot a guy for the first time, I'll have my wife call me 10 minutes after I'm there just in case.
Yeah. Yeah. That Dahmer shoot is not going well.
I'm okay. It was really funny. The first time I shot with Steve, a guy in Sydney. Hi, Steve. Both of our partners called us at almost exactly the same time, and we both had to acknowledge, yes, they were calling to check you're not a psycho.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, you never know, right?
So I think the main thing is if you're concerned about that as a photographer, so let's say first time I'm shooting with Steph, she says, is it okay if I bring my partner Tim along? He'll just be in the corner playing on his phone. I'd just be more comfortable. If it's going to be like that, then maybe having them copied in so they've at least seen the reference photos is a good idea. By the way, that is Steph's partner, Tim.
There he is.
So that... there isn't that surprise. The last thing you want is for someone to bring their friend along who had no idea that they were going to be undressing, who then feels uncomfortable at what's going on. But generally speaking, if someone requests to have someone there, it's, I think, almost mandatory that you need to.
I don't see why you would decline that, because it almost, from my perspective, it seems like it would be weird to decline that. That would be like, my daughter's going to have a photo shoot done with some strange guy, and he's adamant that I not be there, right? Even though, that would be a red flag for me. And then the other side of it is just from a legal, self-preservatory standpoint. Do you want to is it better to have a third person there so that it doesn't become a he said, she said sort of situation, or does that matter?
Well, I know photographers who like to have the makeup artist or someone on set, so they have a witness, so to speak, as well. Look, I really don't know, but I mean, I've had situations too where I'm outnumbered, even though I'm the 6 foot tall photographer, and I felt uncomfortable where I would then want to bring someone along. I was shooting a couple shoot in Vegas, and they were asking, is it okay to bring a friend along? And the friend had a hunting knife in their belt. I'm like, leave that at reception and then you can sit in the corner. But we all just met. That's a bit too much, but it's about being reasonable. And I think, again, setting expectations. Most of the time, this is, you want to do your background. I wouldn't go and just meet with anyone in a dark alley, without some kind of a safety plan in place.
But it happens a lot where photographers are you can't bring anybody with you. And it's
yeah, what do you, Steffi? What do you do in that situation if there's somebody you really want to shoot with and they say no, and you're like, yeah, I want to bring my partner along with me for whatever reasons, and they say no, absolutely not. I don't allow third parties on the shoot. What's your response?
I say, all right, well, thank you, but I'm gonna have to pass.
Yeah,
because it's just. I don't know. It's my safety. I do have little tricks here and there because not every shoot I could bring somebody with me. So I do implement some little tips and tricks just to make sure that I'm safe when I go to shoots by myself. But I mean, I don't see a reason why that is an issue, but it happens a lot. I think I actually got that a few weeks ago. Somebody said that they wanted 3 references for my escort, and I was like, "What? But you don't want
what?
And I was like, "You didn't want references from me?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Okay, I mean, yeah, thanks, but no thanks."
Wow. And keep in mind, it's not just the obvious thing that a woman going to meet a guy, there's a risk there. It's for anyone, really. Yeah. So Steph is a 4th degree black belt, and I'm 200 pounds. It doesn't mean that you're not needing to be aware of what the potential risks are.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And the bottom line is common sense too, right? So it's like when you're traveling in a strange city, Darwin will tell you to walk at 1 o'clock down a dark alley, right? It's just sort of don't do stupid stuff, and you could stay with the herd, basically. So, yeah, no, that's awesome. Okay, so one of the last things I want to chat about is just sort of pro models versus the amateur models, both from a photographer standpoint and from a model standpoint. How do you Matt, from your side first, how do you know that? I mean, I know we talked about the questionnaire and having conversations and all that stuff, but until you get on set, you don't really know. So what's your process for finding these people and then culling out, sort of separating the wheat from the chaff, if that's a good analogy?
Portfolio is normally the best thing. If someone has really shot a lot and has experience, has someone who has also shot a lot, I can see it from the images. So circling back to what makes a good model, and this is a one-sided thing, please you chime in as well, but it's not just about being gorgeous. So to get a great headshot of someone or great candids or the occasional really nice portrait, then yes, there are people who are just more photogenic. But let's just talk about a full nude, when you need to pose your entire body, that just doesn't come naturally to people. You know, it's actually I think the challenge for a photographer as well, that if I'm shooting a headshot, I need to light and get the angles in the most flattering way for this much. Mm-hmm. When we're talking about the entire body, I need to light and consider all of that and think that maybe we maybe we don't want to put attention on the stomach. We do on the hip. We want to make sure that it's lit all the way to the face, that everything is in focus and you're not just focused on the eye and then everything else is out, or focused on something else and the face is out. It is more difficult. I always have thought of Implied and Nudes as kind of normal portraiture on steroids, or just 3 levels up, because you need to build the rapport really quickly. The chance of things getting awkward is higher, so you need to do your job really well. You have potentially the entire body on show where you need to consider all of that and be more nuanced. And then, like you said before, that 1/4 of an inch angle difference or hand position can make the difference between a PG, or is that what you call it here, like a suitable for work image, and an R-rated image.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. See, this is why the world needs a course like this, right? Because all these little nuances of things that you may, people may look at a nude or implied shot and say, that's easy, I could do that. You just put the light there, find a pretty person, lay them there and take some photos. That's it. Put it online, you got instant likes. There's a little more that goes into it than that, right?
Yeah.
There is, but there are some shots that are close to being that easy. It's knowing how to set them up and to be sensitive to what kind of, not every pose works for every person. We did a whole series of yoga inspired shots in this that require more, I think, trust, but definitely more experience as a photographer and as a model in terms of posing. But there was still a 1/3 of them that Steph couldn't pull off as a slim, athletic, experienced model, because they just required too much flexibility. And there'll be shots that, again, we're speaking as adults, that will suit someone really curvaceous and buxom or chubby, but won't suit Steph.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah, and some that I could see that could have been improved way better if like somebody else was doing it for a certain body type. And I can already see that as well. But going back to your question in terms of like, I guess, pro model and amateur model, definitely portfolio helps a lot. For me, like I mean, I'm a model, but I still look at other models just for like inspiration or like just examples, and just to see like, okay, how can I improve? Because it's still an ongoing thing of like, how can I become a better model? What else can I do? I think amateur models, I mean, just as a baseline, I feel personally like they usually only have like one look. I think pro models are able to really like show different expressions, different looks, and really like play with their hands, like their face, like they can emote better through photos. I mean, it's not a video, it's a photo, but if there's still something that you could get from it, then I think that would really define a pro model.
And that's a huge superpower that I've seen when I see models on set, professional models that know how to hit the pose, and they put up, as both of you guys know, models put up with an amazing amount of abuse over sustained periods of time and still have to look amazing and better than, So
and
kudos.
It's exhausting.
If
you've been on the other side of a camera, try standing on tippy toes with your hands in the air, smiling beautifully, and with your hip at a certain angle so you don't have a skin fold here. Try and hold it for 30 seconds. And then go to a shoot and see models being expected to hold it for 5 minutes. It's exhausting. So good tip for photographers as well. When you stop to figure out why your camera isn't autofocusing, tell the model they can chill for 30 seconds and so you don't end up with someone cramping up on you.
Like I have pulled way more muscles doing modeling than I have in Taekwondo.
What?
And it's crazy. Like
wait, from posing or fighting off photographers? Like what?
From posing, like just pointing my toes, or like, because we're constantly flexing, so then we relax and then flex again, relax. It's painful. I mean, after a while you just pull a muscle and you're like,
just suck it up, kid.
I'm good, I got it.
So Matt, here's a hypothetical question for you. So what would you, if you had the choice between a dream model that you've been trying to shoot this model forever and ever, or you've seen photos of this person forever and ever as a celebrity or whatever, and you know you're going to get a good shot with this person, you think, with your skill set, but this person is an amateur and they're not a good model, period. They just, are nature smiled upon them and they look a certain way, versus a average or below average looking model that knows every nook and cranny of how to pose, knows the camera angles, this lens makes me look skinny, all that stuff. Somebody more experienced versus somebody that hit the genetic lottery. Which one would you go with?
And I think this is an important one to ask yourself at the start of any shoot. It's going to depend what I want to do with the images or what the point of the shoot is. I'm not trying to avoid your question. I'll be specific. If I have been sponsored by a company to make a tutorial or to test their equipment, or I'm trying to review something that's really hot and I want to do, or I'm making a tutorial series like we're doing at the end of the month that I'm hiring a model for, I want reliability and experience above everything else. In your specific example, if I'm looking to sell shots, then a celebrity is the way to go, even if they can't pose.
Yeah.
If I'm just trying to create beautiful portfolio, it's difficult because I'm trying to think of if you're just asking me as a Joe on the street, what do I want to then put on my Instagram feed? I would say go for the person who knows how to pose if you're looking for more than one shot.
Yeah.
If you're looking just for that one shot, then the famous or gorgeous person is the way to go. Yeah. But if you're looking to sell it or something like that, it's a different kind of
it's an unfair question because there's so many variables in there. It depends on what you want to do with the images and where your career is, and
is this your way of asking me to shoot you? Because I would be happy to.
Because I'm that below average person. Yeah, thank you.
I was going to say celebrity.
I mean, that's a perfect merging of the two, those looks and that smile.
Whatever. Notice the camera is not going back on me right now. You see?
Oh, you're blushing?
So on that same sort of vein, in pop culture in the United States right now, I would imagine around the world, there's this sort of movement towards the celebration of being overweight or heavyweight or acceptance of that. We've seen a lot of celebrities that are, like Lizzo and all these different people that are like, it's fine to be like this. Should new photographers, not asking you about you specifically, Matt, but should new photographers consider shooting a particular body style or shape or race or something to create a body of work along that genre? Or should they just keep it loose and shoot everybody?
Okay, so again, I would say it depends where you're trying to go with it. For me, if someone's hiring me to take, so I get this question quite a lot over the years, whether it's about looks or size or whatever, that like, how am I going to shoot this overweight woman in Implied, or how I got this one specifically. I couldn't believe it, of someone who'd been hired to shoot a wedding and they're both tattooed and ugly. How do I go about this? Mm-hmm. I'm quoting. Yeah. I said, well, they don't think they're ugly. Just shoot them like people. Like, what are you talking about? They're marrying each other. They want as beautiful shots as you can create of them. So pose them in the most flattering way, light them, choose the right backgrounds, and shoot them like they're Brad and Angelina. And don't be a dick. In terms of like finding your niche, however, again, it really depends where you're trying to go with it. If your goal is to get Instagram likes, then the import model will probably get you the best clicks. Yeah. If you're looking to create a business, then you shoot, the people who are going to pay, essentially. If you're an advertising photographer and you're trying to sell lifestyle stuff, then it's going to depend on that brand. It may be same-sex couples that they want included in their campaign because it reflects their brand. If it's Nike, they're maybe more likely to want an athlete than an overweight singer. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I don't think it's my job as a photographer to not promote an unhealthy lifestyle by excluding overweight people. I mean, as an overweight person who's been much more overweight in the past, I don't have a prejudice of big people being in any way less worthy.
Yeah.
But I do get it. It's true, and not to be rude to my audience that I've created over the years. But if I have Steph in a swimsuit or someone who's 400 pounds in a swimsuit, I know the conversation is going to be really mean on the ladder and probably more negative overall in terms of performance and the attitude of it. So.
Yeah, it's a hard question. I'm full of hard questions today. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's my coffee. I don't know.
But if you're looking to create a business, then maybe being someone who is a plus, there's people who focus on things as specific as interracial couples for weddings, or
same sex or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
Or if you're in a certain community that focuses on Hispanic couples, or that, whatever that is in your area, that's kind of your niche. And if you get known for it, then that's fine. There's certainly countless photographers who have a name for shooting bikini models or fitness models or this or that. There's no reason why there can't be a photographer who's really well known for shooting chubby black men.
Yeah. But getting started though, like if you're just getting started in doing this, does it make sense to focus down and be that specific, or should you like try to shoot as many different kinds of body styles, races, everything as you can, and then niche down and say, hey, I'm just going to shoot chubby black men?
So I guess it depends how early. Oh, sorry, my cat's about to jump on the sofa. I think.
Good. Bring that cat in here.
It depends, again, where you're trying to go with it. So if you're really at the beginning and you're trying to learn, sorry, just stopping a fight there, then I would say as much diversity in terms of body types and shooting situations is great. If you've only ever shot middle-aged white guys in boardrooms, when it comes to shoot the interracial couple on the beach, you might be so out of your element you don't know what to do. Yeah. So as a learning experience to build those muscles, then diversity is great. In terms of like building a name or building a brand, and this is no longer about Implied, this is just about, it's even about, should I be shooting people or landscapes or travel or architecture? Yeah. Then there's two ways to go about it. The pragmatic, I want you to succeed answer is, most photographers I know nowadays aren't just shooting. They're also building websites, they're freelancing doing that, and they're taking what jobs they can get. So saying I only shoot this before you have a name for it is going to be difficult. So shooting everything and over time refining it to the point that you're doing this specialty is a smart way to do it. On the flip side, when I look at a lot of the photographers who I really admire over time, whether they're famous, financially successful, or obscure, it is people who've built up an amazing body of work, and it does tend to be around a theme. So, for example, there's so many examples. Pick Annie Leibovitz. I often use her as example. I bet she could take fantastic landscape shots, but she's not famous for it.
Yeah.
You know her body of work with celebrities and portraiture. Likewise, I bet Ansel Adams could take a decent headshot if he needed to, but that's not what he's known for. So people who, and they may be outliers being celebrities already, my friend Rinzi Ruiz, who is in LA, he's an amazing street photographer who has extremely dramatic light and shadow, and you see a shot and you just know it's his. It doesn't need to have his name on it. You know it's his, and he's getting known. He's not a huge name yet, so to speak, but or even like your Art School Dropouts YouTube channel, they're consistent, they're doing great work, and if and when the day comes that they do blow up, they already have this huge body of work that shows their specialty, that's focused, that has a signature style to it already. That, I think, is an easier way to become like a real legend in what you're doing, rather than someone who's doing well, paying the bills, kind of doing
sort
well.
Of, muddling by. So about the course. So back to the course as we come up on the hour here. That thing. Tell me about it. What's in the course? How long is the course? When is the course going to be available? All that good stuff.
you want to jump on this or I'll
Oh,
do it?
okay. Well, it is available right now for anybody that is interested. If you guys go to mattgranger.com/implied.
She's done this before.
It's about 4 hours.
Yep, 4 hours long.
Yeah, you could get it in 4K or 1080.
Yep.
Um,
So
What
what's
else?
in it? If you go to the page, we are pretty specific. So unlike the series, we're quite explicit about what is included in the series. One thing to note for all of this talk, the course is still aimed at an adult audience because some of the shoots, although the final images we're creating are implied, there is some nudity in the shooting process. And because it's multi-camera setups so that you get an idea of how we're shooting, there is a little bit of nudity in there. So we have, as you're seeing on screen, a whole section where Steph goes through and talks about the model's perspective and answers a whole bunch of questions we got. We do some more artistic high concept stuff, the yoga stuff. I show shooting with a guy who is Steph's partner, Tim, who has never done a shoot like this before and is, for want of a better word, a regular guy, as well as couples and it's often the case if you get into this field of doing paid work that one of the couple has some experience and the other doesn't and is kind of being dragged along kicking and screaming by their partner. So that was quite realistic as well. Yep. But we go through posing and setting up the expectations with the model. It's got editing presets and it's got so much stuff. It's got my art nude posing guide as a bonus as well that is full nudes, but that's got about 60 different poses. There's quite a bit jammed in there.
Yeah, it sounds comprehensive. So from start to finish, if I go through this course with just sort of being the shy guy, I want to shoot this kind of photography, but I don't know where to start, and I'm afraid I'm going to mess up. By the end of it, I should be Matt Granger. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, hopefully you'll have more hair than me. It's not that stressful, of course.
You have many times more hair than me, my friends.
We've had, by choice though, we've had fantastic feedback on it from people who have just done their first shoot through to people who've been shooting for ages but picked up a few tips here and there. I would say we don't go through the basics of how to turn on your camera and attach a lens and all of that kind of thing. We're focused in on this genre, but we do talk about, using continuous light or window light, that kind of thing. So you don't need to rush out and buy a bunch of gear. I'd say by the end of just watching it, you're not going to be able to do everything in the series. But if the end of watching a module, if you then go and apply those lessons and take sample photos and explain the concept with a model and plan it and think it through, you'll be able to create shots that you like, but it's, of course, you can't just watch 4 hours and then catch up on 10 years of modeling and 20 years of photography experience. But I'm confident it'll answer those. Basically, we're trying to answer those questions to help people avoid common pitfalls, to communicate clearly, and I think the most important, to create images that both the photographer and the model were down to shoot and are happy with the result, rather than my style or necessarily fitting a certain censorship guideline. It's about creating shots that you guys think are beautiful and are what you agreed to do.
All right, so in terms of what's in this bundle, this bundle is you put like the kitchen sink in there, all for that one low price, plus a bunch of all the bundles probably equal what the price of the course is. What's in the bundles? We know what's in the course, but what's in the bundle side and all the different pieces that I get?
Okay, so first of all, it's 1080 or 4K, and that's the same price. You just choose whichever one you would like. And so that comes with all of the materials we talk about that we've talked about here, basically the 4 hours worth of content. Then we've got 3 bonuses. Let's see if I can remember them all. It's editing presets for Lightroom and Capture One, a copy of my art nude posing guide, it is actually full nudes, but that's a video and a PDF of poses where we show how to get them into the pose, what the camera angle needs to be, and where the light source is. So you can take that along basically as a cheat sheet. And then also a copy of my second book, which is the one I mentioned earlier about why do we consider nudity to be such a taboo thing these days. But it's art nudes shot in public places all around the world.
Love it. Well, thanks both of you guys for coming on. This is this is one of the first interviews of 2020 that I've done. I can't think of a better group of people to do it with, and a better topic to do it with. I think this is if you're considering this kind of photography, or were ever curious about it, this is the perfect course to kind of get your feet wet at the very least, even if you don't intend to shoot, just to understand this genre of photography better. I think is important. You guys are doing important stuff, and Matt, you're always doing important stuff, like putting nude people at intersections in Shinjuku or something, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, I don't want to be a stickler, but it was Shibuya, not Shinjuku. But
okay,
yes,
Shibuya.
I'm doing the Lord's work.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And before we end this, Stephanie Pham, where I heard a couple of mentions that you have a YouTube channel. Where is this YouTube channel if people want to, keep up with what you're working on?
Okay, so my YouTube channel, it's called Art School Dropouts. We have like other channels that we're gonna start up soon, but Art School Dropouts is the main one that I actually help manage. So the content that I have on there is way different than the stuff that I'm doing with Matt's. It's martial arts, action comedy. We do a lot of like short films, sketches, web series, features.
That's killer. That's cool.
Yeah, we're basically filmmakers,
Really
and we like old school. Like if you guys like Jackie Chan or Sammo Hung, like Hong Kong 80s action type of stuff. That's
I grew up on that stuff. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I have a brother that's like 2 years older than me, and every Saturday we'd be running around the house, either having watched those or cartoons or some Godzilla marathon or something. So that was the classics.
They're so good,
and they're back now. I think because it's like you can make
to help bring it back.
Yeah, but I think people appreciate them now. I think differently because now people can make this kind of quality on their phone in a lot of ways, shooting 4K video on a phone and editing on the phone. Looking back then at what they had to go through to get that, it gives you a new level of respect, I think. So, cool. All right. So, Art School Dropouts. All right. Yes. So, I'll put that in the lower third and in the show notes for this episode. Well, cool. Well, thanks to both of you for coming on again. I appreciate it. And Matt, your URL is not that Nikon guy anymore, right? So what's the new URL for Matt Granger?
I branded it in a really wild way. It's mattgranger.com.
What? Really?
I know, right?
Right?
Wow.
He's a wild man. He's a wild man.
I have been thinking to change my name now that I'm in America. Well, I'll wait till I move to Hollywood. And then we'll find something flashier.
There you go.
Thank you for having us on. It's really nice to chat.
Us.
You're welcome. All right, guys. Well, have a good weekend. I'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.
Cheers.
This is Twitter.